I'm sure you all know by now that I will be leaving Brooke at the end of August. A hugely difficult decision for me. I've been chief exec now for 11 years. It's quite a long time. And I've been really privileged to have this role. And I hope, as I've said to many of you, that if Dr. Brooke was looking down on where the organisation was today, she would be very proud of what we've achieved. And so over the coming weeks, we'll be appointing an interim to hold the fort when I move on until the my permanent successor is in place. But, you know, I think when Brooke gets into your heart, when you're part of the staff team or you're part of our supporters network, it stays in your heart forever. So this isn't really goodbye to everyone, because actually I'm going to become a supporter myself. And I'm going to come along to events like this. And I promised the team I won't ask too difficult questions. But also I've made the decision, my husband and I are going to be moving house because we have, I have a new job near Bristol, working with horses for a charity called Horse World, looking at therapy with horses and young people excluded from school. But as we move house, we're going to update our wills. And so I was very pleased to confirm to the team that I will be leaving a legacy to Brooke, because that's my commitment to the organisation. I think the charity is doing amazing work, and I know a number of you have been supporters for many, many years, so you'll be able to have seen the journey we've been on and the impact that it has on the lives of those animals and of the people as well. So although I'll be leaving this post, I won't really be leaving Brooke. And so I'm sure our paths will cross in the future, and hopefully at a physical event rather than just online through Zoom. Anyway, that's enough about me. I want to get on to our first presentation, which is my colleague, Claire Twelvetrees, who's our Director of Strategy and Performance. And she's going to talk about what Brooke is doing and her recent visit to see Brooke's work in Senegal, how we're learning, how we're adapting, and thinking about the future of Brooke, particularly as we emerge from COVID-19. And after that, we'll take a few questions for Claire. So with no further ado, hopefully Claire is there and we can listen to your presentation.
Hello everybody, it's lovely to be here today and to be in, I think we're up to 75 people now, which is lovely. So as Petra said, I'm the Director of Strategy and Performance, and what I'm going to talk to you today is about, given my role also, it's about where is Brooke going, how do we deliver our work, and what are we learning and evolving as a result, how are we learning and evolving as a result of COVID. And I'm going to draw on those points from my recent trip to Senegal, which was in February. So I'm going to go on to the next slide, and I'm just going to move my view. I realise that, give me a second, technical. I can't see my screen very well, but I think I'm okay. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is the challenge, and I think you'll all be very aware of the challenge and the scale of the need, but also how we meet this, how we work. And as I said, highlights from Senegal, and then how are we adapting to COVID-19? And then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. And the photos on the right is from my trip to Senegal. And my background, I've been in Brooke about 2 years and a half. And my background before that was very much human development. And it was actually going into the field, I realized how ubiquitous the working horses and donkeys and mules are. They are everywhere, carrying water, carrying people, carrying goods to market, working in exploitative industries. I mean, I was snapping with my camera all the time. You know, you look around and there are so many working animals. And I think it hadn't occurred to me the extent to which communities and people do rely on their animals. Because before you work for an animal charity like this, you don't always necessarily see the animals. So I wanted to be honest about that. But when I, of course, was exposed to it, I realized how important they are. And if you think about a country like Ethiopia, there's 11 million walking horses, donkeys and mules in that country, and many more in other countries. So I'm going to be moving on now to the challenge. I think many of you will be familiar with this. And as I said, there are about 11 million in Ethiopia, but over the world, globally, there's about 100 million working horses, donkeys and mules, and they support about an estimated 600 people globally. So every working equid supports about 6 people. And these are critical to people's livelihoods and resilience. And you'll see on the right-hand side the diagram about actually all of the work highlighted before that working horses, donkeys, and mules do. So for example, the water, the market, the just moving this now, supporting in terms of food security and health. I mean, taking people to hospital as well in remote areas. And also, as I said, working in exploitative industries, in coal mines, in brick kilns. But as you know, I mean, the very, very, very upsetting situation is that they often suffer abuse and neglect and toil in unimaginably difficult conditions. And on top of this, they are overlooked and invisible. So of course, if they're in poor welfare, then their ability to support the communities that depend on them is severely undermined. And of course, in COVID, when households are in lockdown, they are no longer able to go about their daily business. They're going to market for selling the fruit and the vegetables. So all of this, the animal welfare and actually the welfare of the people is extremely severely undermined and exacerbated by COVID. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. So I want to talk a bit about our theory of change and our strategy. And I think you're familiar with Brooke, and what we really do try to do is we adopt a holistic approach. And this is because we believe that we want to have a sustainable improvement in equine welfare. So we want to tackle the root causes of equine welfare. So we're not into quick fixes. And we recognize, I mean, I don't know how many of you are familiar with theories of change, but it is how we believe change happens. So if you look at the center of the diagram, what we are here for, our vision and our mission, as you can see, is about the working horses, donkeys and mules. We wish for a world in which there is no more suffering of horses, donkeys and mules. But in order to get there, we believe that we need multifaceted approach. We believe that the communities themselves need to thrive, or there needs to be an absence of poverty, because poverty aggravates, of course, animal welfare. But we also believe that the systems need to be strong and effective, and servicing the ability for people in remote areas or people all over the world to be able to access a animal health professional, for example. So we believe the systems and the communities working in tandem will result in an improvement, a sustainable improvement of equine welfare. And that's underpinned by, as you can see, we've got livelihoods and resilience, which means that we work to strengthen the livelihoods and resilience of the equine owning communities. And I'll go on to give you some examples about how we do that. We also work with communities to encourage compassion and behavior change, particularly supporting communities to understand the true value of their animal. And sometimes they don't necessarily understand that how much the animal actually brings to them in terms of, goods to market, and then the income that allows them to support their family. So I mean, I'll go on to talk about it, but for example, we work with communities, with community animators who might say, well, why don't you call your animal a name? Why don't you call your donkey a name? That brings the animal more close to the household and the family. So again, I've talked a bit about animal health systems. That's another plank of our work, and we believe that needs to be in place in order for the sustainable improvement of animal welfare. And then the fourth component is enabling environment. So that's the policies, the legislation, and the practices that are conducive to animal welfare more broadly, but equine welfare, of course, most importantly. So that would be legislation around beating animals, for example, that we would advocate for. So that's in a nutshell what we believe, and we operate to deliver elements across all of these depending on the context. In some contexts, we might have a greater focus on animal health. In other contexts, we might work at more behavior and compassion, for example. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. So now I'm going to talk for the next 5 or so minutes about my visit to Senegal. And I'm going to draw on what I said earlier about the animal health, the behavior change, the compassion, and the policy change, and illustrate it with what I saw. And so I'm going to start with, I mean, this is a local vet's pharmacy, actually, in a small town that's north of Dakar. So Dakar's a capital. It's a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours north, and it's Dr. Seke, and he is one of the vets, one of the 4,000 vets that we mentor. We've got a mentoring program because we moved away, many of you will be aware, we moved away from direct and free treatment several years ago because we believe that a more sustainable model is to actually transfer the skills to the existing people, the systems and structures that have already been set up in countries to deliver animal health, for example. So he was really proud, and I'm going to go on to show him, he's on the next slide, but I just wanted to show, you know, quite a rudimentary pharmacy, but fairly well equipped with medicines and very, very well used. I mean, this is like a, given the ubiquitous nature of horses, donkeys and mules, I mean, these are such important shops for people to go and get the vital medicines for their animals. So I'm going to move on. So there he is in green, Dr. Seke, and he was very, very proud of being a Brooke vet that had benefited from mentoring. And actually he was part of the Vets Resource Network, which is a network in Senegal. I think we've got them in other countries where they share information, resources, and support each other as a network. And he also was selected to lecture at Dakar University. So again, he was spreading the message further. And as a result of his confidence and capability increasing through working with us, he then progressed to quite a senior lecturing position in his spare time. So he was very, very, very positive about our work. I mean, I'll make another small point on drugs and vaccines. I mean, as you're probably aware, in developing countries, they do not have sophisticated animal health systems, and they often lack access to drugs and vaccines. And in some countries, Ethiopia being an example, we set up a drug and vaccine revolving fund where the community putting a bit of money in, us putting a little bit of money in, and it allows the community to access the drugs that they need, and then they are replenished by the community. It's quite a common model for organizations working internationally, but that has enabled some of the, there's a dearth of drugs available for animals. So that's Dr. Seke. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. So in the same, this was about 200 yards from his little pharmacy outlet. So this is one of the shelters we built in Mekle, and there he is, Dr. Seke. And this wasn't on market day, so it wasn't completely full. I think there were about 4 to 6 horses on this day. But when it is market day, once or twice a week, it's full of horses. So it's a very nice shelter. And I'm just going to move on. And the interesting thing about the shelter is our vision for it. And it's still, I think it was built about a year ago, but it becomes a one-stop shop for the community. So if I move on to the next slide, you can see it's a bit of a hubbub. The people come with their horses to rest, to feed, to shelter, and also can get access to farriers, to other animal health providers, vets, etc. And there's quite a lot of shade. I mean, when we design the shelters, we also make sure that we try to create a bit of an environment space as well by planting trees, a bit of shelter for the people, and a bit of quite a marketplace, but a bit of a hubbub, a bit of a place where people can meet as well. So that gives you a sense of that. And it was right in the center of town, so very much accessible by the market. So I'm going to move on now to farriery. So I'm going to cover the animal health, both dimensions, the vets and the farriery. So we've got a global project on farriery, and I'm going to start with just some of the challenges around farriery. So I'm moving my photos so I can see the slides as well. So farriery in developing countries is an unrecognised and unregulated industry. There's no farrier training institutions, and there's a poor access to quality tools. So it's a trade, it's not a profession, it's not a recognised profession, and people do as the best job they can do with the limited tools and resources that are available to them. And also there's quite a negative public perception of farrieries. They're not particularly sophisticated or professional or desirable jobs. But what we're trying to do is, well, our vision for farriery, and this really is our essence in Brooke. It's about the animals, but it's actually about the interdependence of the animals and the people. So our vision for farriery is it to become a recognised, respected and profession, which will in turn lead to measurable improvements in animal welfare. Because if people want to become farriers because it's professional and recognised, then the standards of farriery are going to be increasing. And as a result then, you know, animals' hooves will be far better, in a far better state. And you know, the hooves are so essential. I mean, there's a quote there, no foot, no horse. So this correlation between a life worth living in terms of an animal and also a job worth having. And we talk about it also in relation to the Sustainable Development Goals. Many of you will be aware of the Sustainable Development Goals, but actually, you know, if I'll go on to explain how we're working on Farriery, but if it becomes more of a recognised, regulated profession, then actually it provides a decent job and decent work for what will become, or certainly there will be, as a consequence of COVID, livelihoods are threatened, and there'll be an even greater need for people to be in good professions, but also in terms of quality education and no poverty. So this link between life worth having for people and horses is a good example of what we're trying to do with Farriery. So I'll go on to the visit that I undertook. Again, we're still north of Dakar in a place called Chess, and it was the local stud farm that was able to host the training for the farriers. So what we see here is Dr. Maimoma, and she is a vet in the Senegal, Brooke, West Africa, Senegal office. And it was really lovely to see such a, you know, she was a confident, skilled, professional vet who'd also trained in farriery, training a group of mixed ranges of older men. You can see on the right now, he was a very well-established farrier. He seemed to be training the others along with her. And then a lot of youths, and this is really interesting because youth unemployment is an issue in developing countries, and actually indeed in our country. And you know, farriery wasn't a desirable profession, but I was very interested to see how many youths were involved in this training. And the training was as a result of Brooke, West Africa, Senegal office, also the Ministry of Vocational Studies and World Horse Welfare. So it was a cooperative agreement, which also made it more legitimate and professional because we were linked into the government. So some of you will be aware of Fatou, the first female farrier in Senegal, and I think this is really nice. You'll see there's the magazine of her promoting her as the first female farrier in Senegal, and me trying my hand at farriery. But I think this is also interesting from a gender perspective, because you don't usually see, well, you certainly don't see women farriers, but it actually helps challenge gender stereotypes. And she was confident, she was capable, she used to be a metal worker. And so we feel really proud that we can challenge those gender stereotypes and also provide role models for others who may wish to go into the profession. She has become famous. So I'm going to move on to the community elements. I've talked about animal health, talked about farriery, and then veterinary and paravets. And I'm going to talk about the community level. So this is really, we went into a community, actually we went there just before the farriery visit. And again, we're still north of Dakar. And what we do in Brooke, West Africa, and actually many of our countries, we work with partner organizations who are already working in the communities. And in Senegal, they were farmers organizations. But interestingly, they hadn't ever really thought about the equids. So they were focused on the people and the crops and the livestock, but hadn't really understood that actually the working equids are providing such a vital element of supporting the communities. So this guy was the champion of equine welfare, and it was a lovely, he seemed to be so proud of his horse was in good condition, and he then championed good welfare practices throughout the community. So in Brooke, I'm going to move on to the next slide. But you can see, I mean, it's a poor community, but nevertheless, he was sharing good practice. I mean, he had a rudimentary shelter for the animal. But in the communities that we work, we tend to work with the communities to set up equine welfare groups where they will always have access to a first aid kit. They'll understand and they'll be trained in feeding and watering and identifying injuries, basic injuries, and what to do. But I think also having champions, also the sort of the peer pressure around, well, actually my animal's in good health and welfare, there's a knock-on effect, because people also think, well, that's good practice and I'm going to do the same thing. So in some countries, for example, in India, we've got thousands of equine welfare groups all over the country, and they've got more of a formal structure. So they form associations, and then they can access microcredit. They've got savings and loans associations. So they are able to support themselves and their equids through the microcredit, for example. So India is particularly quite sophisticated with the setup. So I'm going to move on. So we're still in the same community, and this was really interesting because the women were gardening. They called it the women's gardens, and they were really proud of their vegetables. And these were helped by the manure that was collected from the donkeys, and and there was also a biogas facility to create fertilizer. And the interesting thing is that because, again, it's that link between the value of the donkeys were being kept in shelters rather than being allowed to roam in order to collect the manure, in order then to use on the garden and also for the biogas. So it had a double benefit: one, better vegetables and gardens and biogas, but two, better care of the donkeys. And certainly when we met some of the leaders in the partner organisations, they say there's been a decrease in animals roaming around now as a result of this and other initiatives, our work. Move on. So this was another farmers organisation, and I just wanted to share it to demonstrate there's many, the women sitting in the front of the community animators, and you saw the man with his horse in a few earlier slides. So the community animators are people that we train in equine welfare, and they will be part of the community and they will help spread those messages, etc. So I just wanted to share that. And actually, I think the guy in the hat is the president of the farmers organization. And he was telling us some amazing stories about, since we've started working with you, people respect their donkeys more. You see that young men washing their donkeys, and that never happened because, you know, they weren't appreciated and valued. And he gave a lovely story about a headmaster who's now seen going to his school on a donkey. So therefore, he's modeling the way, he's demonstrating that actually this animal is so valuable to me. So there was a stigma attached to donkeys. You would never call anybody a donkey, for example, but the president has noticed this shift, and actually, interestingly, fewer road accidents as well as a result of our work. So so that's a lot of the community work. And in the same, this was an interesting example as well. The community, again, the way that we work is we listen to the communities, we work with them. So we're very much about building trust and credibility. And this was an example of, they said, well, we've got all of these long sticks, we can't feed them to, they call them sticks. I was wondering exactly what they were, but they call them sticks. We can feed them to the cows, but we can't feed them to the donkeys and the horses, but we need a machine, which they called a cutting machine, in order that we can make them smaller and then we can feed them to the equids. And so we provided that. And then this is still an early, and again, it's an early intervention, and we're working out a more comprehensive business model for this with the partner organisation. But essentially, these guys go around, use the machine to cut these long sticks into shorter sticks, and then they're bound up, and then they can be sold at a very low cost to the equine owners to feed their equids. So it was an example of the community saying, we would like this, it would make a lot of sense, it can help feed, certainly in the off season, our equids. And so we provided that in collaboration. Okay, just about 3 or 4 more slides. I'm going to move on to COVID and how we've adapted and evolved and learned. Okay, so the overarching point I wanted to make is that, of course, COVID has caused the whole world to go into, it's a deep crisis, and it's more of a crisis, even though we've experienced COVID worse, even in the UK, it is probably more of, or potentially more of a crisis in developing countries who don't have the safety nets, have lots of people simply furloughing is not available to them. So, and of course the animals which the people depend on. So our approach has been in COVID, and I think it's a testament to the integrity of our organisation. We have kept on delivering our mission in different ways. We've adapted, and I'm going to give you a few examples, and I'll illustrate that with some stories from Pakistan. But animal health, I mean, because we don't do direct treatment anymore ourselves, we've built up the skills, the capabilities, the capacities of the animal health workers and the farriers, as you've seen, throughout the countries we work. So we've just been continuing to train and mentor, but converting it to remote. I think the overarching point is we've harnessed technology to be able to still deliver our mission. So we've collaborated with universities and the OIE, which is the World Health Organization for Animals, to provide more open access training to the vets, the animal health service providers, etc., and have been doing hints and tips using WhatsApp and telemedicine. So essentially on the animal health side, we've just converted our work to digital, and we're still maintaining that level of training, guiding, advising and mentoring. I think in communities, and again, this is testament to the trust and credibility. I mean, a lot of, in some cases, we have supported the governments to share messages around health and safety regarding COVID, but also some of the equine owning communities, women are now making masks, for example, to distribute in brick kilns, or we've encouraged brick kiln owners to distribute masks. So because we've got these strong relationships at multiple levels, we are working closely with those who whose responsibility it is to spread the messages, because our whole aim is, you know, our ethos, if a community falls into deeper and greater poverty, then the animals are also going to suffer. Another example, and I'll illustrate it, is in India and Pakistan, there's been a lot of government schemes, not quite the same schemes as we've got in the UK, but some support to communities in crisis. So we've been ensuring equine owning communities have been linked to the support that is available to them. And then finally, I haven't really talked about policy change and legislation in the presentation, but we've tried to convert or use technology still to advocate for issues that are important to us. For example, the donkey skin trade. And we've been using innovative platforms such as the Twitter conference. So these are just a few photos, and I have just lifted from the Pakistan newsletter, because we've got an intranet internally in the organization, and there's such a lot of content and wonderful stories from the field that are coming out from the 6 countries that we work in. So I just thought I would keep them as is. I don't expect you to be able to read it all, and that's not the intention, but it's just photos about, so for example, on the left hand side, you've got the women making the face masks for the brick kiln community members. I think they've managed to get a donation as well from a textile factory, garment factory. And then on the right hand side, you've got a man who's now got his support that he's entitled to because the community is in crisis as a result of, so it's a relief grant, as you can see. So it just demonstrates how connected Brooke is in countries with the government, with other support systems and services, that we have worked with them to enable what the communities are entitled to get to them. On the right hand side you can see, and these are just some of the examples. If you look on our intranet, there are so many stories coming in every day about how we've been innovating to adapt our work in light of COVID. So I think this has been one of the last, and just an example, and this is my penultimate slide, and at the same time I think because we're so well connected, our visibility and the messages which we have been sharing are getting out there, perhaps even more so because we've been talking about the issues. So for example, this is Brooke Pakistan on television. So talking about the hardship that the equid owning communities are facing as a result, because a lot of these are daily wage labourers. If they don't get any money, they get cash in hand. And if they don't get it, then they're thrown into poverty, as I said before. But also how our systems and structures are sustainable, so we can carry on working and through this and help people to bounce back better, as it were, to use a bit of jargon. So I just want to conclude by looking a little bit to the future. And I'll move and Petra talked about our values, and I think our values are really important here. We're proud to be Brooke, we're resourceful, share new ideas and help each other succeed. So together we make change happen. I think that will carry us through into the future. As a practical point into the future, we are going to be, Director of Strategy, as I said, we're developing a new strategy, but that will take forward the lessons we've learned from COVID and enable Brooke and the communities and the animals that we serve to bounce back better, or bounce forward, as we say. So, I think those are the key messages I wanted to share with you today. I just will mention, we believe that technology will still be a key part of the future, because we have, as I said, we've been delivering our mission differently using technology. That will be a key element in our future. And I think the other key element for us, we've been really careful and we care about our staff during this time, and we've always put our staff first. And I think that really helps in terms of well-being and stress management and mental health that can happen as a result of such a crisis. So we put our staff first, and we're going to harness the power of technology as we go into the future. So I think that's all for me, and hopefully you've got a sense of what we do: animal health, community, livelihoods, resilience, policy, and how we have adapted and evolved as a result of COVID, and what we are going to be taking into the future. So I want to thank you all for supporting Brooke, and of course this wouldn't be possible without your support. So thank you very much, and I'm really happy to take any questions.
Claire, that's excellent. And you were saying that's all from you. I'm afraid it's not, because we do have a number of questions. So probably more than I've got time to ask you. But the first question is, one of our audience has seen little donkeys being overloaded in Senegal, and wondered what we can do to actually stop the overloading of donkeys. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, we've also got, I've talked about a global project in terms of farriery, and we've also got a global project in terms of harnessing. So we from a technical perspective, we understand very well the limit to what any horse or donkey or mule is able to carry. And it's through pilot projects and educating communities, etc., that we will start to make a difference. But for us, hooves and harnessing are so important. Some of my colleagues will know more detail about the specific harnessing work that we do, and we're really happy to share that. But harnesses and loads are very important to us.
And you also mentioned policy change, didn't you? So
yes.
I guess legislation can be helpful in this case.
Yes.
Did you see any evidence of that when you were in Senegal?
From memory, we were successful with beating and bylaws for beating. I would have to go back to the Senegal country director and team to see whether we've had any success at a district or national level on loads. But we certainly have in other countries. But
yeah, no, I've definitely seen that in the brick kilns. They have limits on loads, and it's often those champions that are responsible for monitoring to make sure that the animals are not overloaded.
Yeah.
And obviously
the eyes on the ground.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Somebody else has asked us about the Gambia. So you've talked about Senegal, which is in West Africa, and whether or not we have any work in the Gambia or perhaps other parts of that region.
No, we don't in the Gambia. It's interesting because we work in Burkina Faso, which is the next country along. I know Gambia is like a little, you can get from Senegal to Gambia and then back to Senegal again, but not to my knowledge. I suspect we've got links there because our country director is very, very well connected, but I don't believe we've got an intention to work there yet. But it's a good point.
Okay. Somebody's asked whether or not the agents, the field staff that you were describing, are they actually resident in Senegal, or do they fly in or do their work and go somewhere else? So, you know, what proportion of our local staff and field agents are actually from Senegal?
Oh, they're all from Senegal. I mean, all the countries that we work in, they are all employed from the local population, and then the community animators come from the community. So it's the only one country, actually we're moving away from that. We have an expat who leads the office in Latin America, but she's handing over to a national person at the beginning of July. So absolutely, that's a part of our belief that we employ local people because they're closest to the communities that they serve.
Excellent. And one final question. I was asked around euthanasia and whether what's the kind of availability of drugs for euthanasia. I know that you don't have a veterinary background, but I'm not sure if that came up in your visit, Claire, or maybe it's a question we can ask one of our vets.
Yes, I think it is. I know that it's challenging. It didn't come up in my trip. I think in the developing countries that we work, they're predominantly private sector animal health services. So of course you pay for euthanasia. And if you're very poor, it's often a challenge to pay. So I talked about the drug revolving fund. That provides some access to the medicines and vaccines, etc. But if you want a more specific answer on euthanasia, we can talk to a vet.
Yeah, I don't have specific experience in Senegal, but I know in Ethiopia we've done quite a lot of work with the government to get some of these drugs actually into the country. So, you know, we always use local drugs from the country. And I know we're working with district veterinary services to make sure that drugs are available. And absolutely, the revolving drug fund has been really important. The last question, which I'm going to answer myself, is about the allocation of donations and how much actually goes to our field work. And, you know, this is something that I'm really proud of, because in Brooke, we aim for about 70% of our funds going into our charitable objectives. And you can have a look at our report and accounts, which is on the website, for more information. We invest quite a lot in fundraising because we want to maintain levels of income, and it's a very competitive environment at the moment for fundraising. But we do aim for 70% of our money going into our charitable aims. So any donations that you raise, some part of it will go into growing our fundraising for the future, but a big chunk of it does go into our charitable activities. And of course, most of that does go overseas to our 6 regions around the world. And somebody's asked about Uganda. We do work in Uganda. We have a East Africa office, which encompasses Uganda as part of that, although there's not very many equines in Uganda. And we do work in South Sudan as well. But I think that's all we've got time for, Claire, today. Thank you very much for your presentation. I do hope everybody found it interesting, and I think there's some great stories there to take away and for us to tell other people about what Brooke is doing. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Good. Okay, I'd like to move on now to Gemma, and I don't know how many people know Gemma. Gemma's been a supporter of Brooke for some time, but she's also an equestrian and an event rider, and she's going to be giving us a bit of a tour of her yard. So I haven't seen her on Zoom yet, but Gemma, if you're there, apologies for being a bit late in the schedule, but perhaps you can introduce yourself and we can see where you are and what's going on.
Yes, I'm definitely here in my yard currently, waiting to show you around. So I'm going to show you around some of my fantastic event horses, ranging from retired ones, 20 years old, all the way down to sort of 3-year-olds here to be broken in and start their careers. So we've got horses that compete at 5-star level in eventing, all the way through to literally just being broken. We also have some show jumping horses here as well. So I'm going to turn myself around, and my very glamorous assistant Charlotte, who's my head girl, is going to follow with the camera. So this is our gorgeous yard. We have 7 stables down each side. I'll show you the other side in a minute. And this is Chilly Morning, who is about to have a wee. So he's just come in from the field and he's having a wee. But Chilly Morning is actually a very, very famous horse. He won badminton, which is the most prestigious event in the world. He's also competed at the Olympic Games, the World Championships, and the European Championships, winning individual medals at both the Europeans and the World Games. So he's a very special horse. He's a stallion, and he is 20 years old. Here he is, so he's going to come and say hello now. He's a very special boy, and we've got lots of offspring by him as well. So he's retired now, but he's looked after here at his home, and he is basically lives the life of luxury. That's all he does, and has lots of kisses. As you can see, he's a big soppy stallion. So he's a very happy horse. This guy is actually out in the field at the moment. He's actually one of Chili Morning's sons. This is another son of Chili. This is Alfie. Come and say hi, Alf. As you can see, very similar in his head, chestnut with a white face. He's 10 years old and he's actually competed at the highest level already. He's an amazing horse, and I've had him since the day he was born. So we've definitely got quite a good bond. And yeah, he's a very fun horse to ride. And then this guy here, he's a real yard favourite. His stable name is Yo-Yo. He's owned by Linda Allen. He's only 6 years old. We bought him last year. Very lucky to have this one. He is very talented, and we hope he's got a big future ahead of him. And he always does this because he's like the yard clown. So we always have to have stupid faces and puddles. So yeah, he's a complete joker. This lady is out hand raising at the moment. She's not allowed to go in the field because she has a bit of a crack in her hoop, so she just gets hand raised right now. So out here we have our amazing osteopath, Liz, who helps our horses and gives them massages and treatments on a regular basis. And this is the gorgeous Pomero, who's competed at the highest level. He's 13 years old, and yeah, he's one of the best. So as you can see, he's enjoying his treatment, having a little rest. And then we walk across the courtyard here. Got some more stables out there. Charlotte's going to show you. Some of the young horses down there, some of the girls' horses, very relaxed atmosphere, happy horses. And then this is the other side. So we have, again, 7 stables down here. We've got some of the really sort of top class horses in here. Again, this is another Chili Morning offspring. She's actually the eldest one at 12 years old, I believe. Jalapeno, and again, she has competed at the highest level, 5-star. This little lady here, she is full of sass and cheekiness. She's actually a show jumper. She's 7, and her name's Candy. Ever so fond of her. She's like a little jumping bean. And then this is a very special lady. This is Quick Look, or Pebbles, as she's known at home. She has taken me to lots of amazing places, including the European Championships and the Rio Olympic Games. So yeah, she's pretty special. She's 15 now, but she's as well as ever, and will hopefully carry on competing when we're allowed to again. She's great fun, and she knows she's special. She likes showing off to everyone. If there's not a crowd, she can't be bothered. She's quite funny. So this is Pomero's stable. He's having his osteopath treatment. And this is another special lady. Come on, Bella. Come on. She's very beautiful. She's retired from eventing now, but she's doing some show jumping. This is Bella. She actually was selected for the Rio Olympic Games along with Quick Look, and unfortunately she had a tiny little injury just before we went, so Pebbles got to go. But so she was just as good and just as special. She would have definitely have gone, and I'm sure she would have gone very well. But yeah, she's an amazing horse. She has a heart of a lion. She'll just jump anything you put in front of her. And she's a very special girl. So this is actually normally my main man's stable, Arctic Soul. But he's having a little rest at the moment because of lockdown and not competing. He's chilling out in the field. So this is actually a 7-year-old that's in here, who, as you can see by her fat tummy, is quite obsessed with eating her food. Oh, she's going to come see us. Her name is Summer, and she loves her dinner. She's got lockdown issues like all of us. fatty. But yeah, she just loves eating her food, so she's constantly on a diet, aren't you, Adam? So, and we go through here into our rug room. I'm very lucky to be sponsored by Weather Vita Rugs. As you can see, there's a lot of rugs in here. Charlotte and I are a bit obsessed with rugs, so it suits us down to the ground. Yeah. And then if you follow me through here, we've got feed room. This is Parker, who is here in training. Sponsored by Gain Horse Feeds. Very lucky to have a great sponsor, and hundreds of feeds made up for all of our hundreds of horses that we have here. And if you come through here, this is our wash down area, and someone's having a bath. Someone's having a bubble bath. This is Millie. She is a 9-year-old horse. Competes at eventing and show jumping. She's a very beautiful girl. She's owned by Linda Allen as well, as Yo-Yo. As you can see, she's enjoying her bubble bath. Duck under the rope. We'll go in here quickly and see our tack room. Lots of bridles, saddles. Are sponsored by Shieldrick Saddles. Very lucky. So yeah, we love our tack room. It's hopefully organised. And I'm going to show you something very special quickly. You must have seen Fizzle in the picture. She follows me everywhere. This is my little terrier. And she's probably going to trot along in front of us to show us what I'm going to show you. Where are your puppies? Come on then, show us. There we are. And we have 5 gorgeous puppies. Puppelinis! Puppies! Here they are. And hopefully, well, no, we're going to be keeping this little one here. And her name is Elsa. So here they are, very cute and gorgeous mummy. She's the bestest, obviously. So yeah, so that's my tour for you of my place, my home, and my lovely dog and puppies, who are the most important things in my life. Hope you enjoyed.
That's amazing. Last time we saw you, poor Twizzle had a big fat tummy and the puppies weren't born. So it's just amazing to see them there.
Yeah.
And lovely to see all your horses. You clearly have a special relationship with all of them, but do you have a favourite amongst all the ones you've shown us?
It's really hard to have a real favourite, but I have to say one of I have sort of 3, and they're the horses that have I've had a long time and that have taken me kind of to the top, and that's Chica Bella, who you saw there, one of the last horses in the row, the bay mare, and the grey mare. They're just particularly special, along with Arctic Soul, who's out in the field at the moment. They're very special horses to me, yeah.
And we've been talking today about the effects of COVID-19 and what the Brooke programs are doing overseas to kind of keep helping the animals. I'm sure COVID-19 has had a huge effect on you. Has it? Have you still been able to exercise the horses over the past 12 weeks? And are there any welfare concerns that you've had with them, apart from the rather lumpy tummy that we saw earlier?
Not really had necessarily any welfare issues. Obviously, we have tried to keep their routine as much the same as we can, as always. A lot of the young horses we've actually just put out in the field to give them a rest. I didn't see the point in keep going if there was sort of nowhere to go with them competing wise. So they've gone out in the field. They've just started coming back into work now. And then sort of a lot of the top horses, okay, they weren't in full fitness work, but they were just ticking over gently and safely, and going out in the field at home and things like that. So we've sort of kept a good routine for them.
And when do you think you'll be out competing again? When are we going to see you out eventing?
Well, hopefully soon. I don't want to sort of be in a rush. I think it's really important with the weather being so amazing, which is fantastic, but the ground is therefore very hard, which obviously is a welfare issue for me, because it means I get injuries, and I don't want that. So in my head, I've kind of written off the year. Although it would be fantastic to get out competing, which is my plan, it'll certainly be steady at the beginning, and we'll just see how it goes, with what events run and how they run and the ground, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a challenge for everyone, but with such a herd of horses, I can see exactly what you're saying. Gemma, my last question, and I'm just checking on the Zoom to see if anyone's put a question on chat. When you do go out competing, do you have a kind of a lucky mascot, or is there anything particular? Do you have a superstition, something that you always do when you go out there to sort of give yourself good luck?
Not necessarily, but I am a bit weird about, so I won't ever wear anything new. I'm fun. So if there's like new boots for the horses, or a new numner, a saddle pad, or if I've got new breeches, or even socks or pants, I won't wear anything new. So it has to be worn twice, like to the point where if we've had a new saddle pad for the horses, for example, I've made the girls tack the horses up all fully and then untack them and re-tack them up so it's not new. Which is crazy, but it's just something I have,
that's brilliant. Well, we heard it here first. So Gemma, I have to say it's the first time I've ever been on a virtual yard tour, and I did think at the end when you said you got something really special that you might have had a little foal to show us. Have you had any foals this year?
Yeah, we've got two beautiful foals. Unfortunately, they're not here. They're just up the road. I've got a fantastic friend with a beautiful field, which is literally 2 minutes from my house, which is so nice. So they're just up there, but we've got two absolutely gorgeous foals. Love them to bits. Completely soppy about them.
Well, maybe that's for another day. Gemma, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really nice to see your yard and see the kind of relationship you have with the horses, which obviously is something at Brooke, in our compassionate handling work, we really try and promote that kind of bond between horses and people. And clearly in your work, when you're eventing, that bond is so important. And I know I've watched you many times and you're absolutely a joy to watch riding. So I wish I was as brave as you are. But thank you so much for joining us today, and thanks for all your support to Brooke. It means a huge amount to us.
That's okay, anytime. Love to show you around.
And thank goodness we've got a nice sunny day for it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Gemma.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so I think that we're coming towards the end of our event today. Before we go, I want to hand you over to Alison to tell you a little bit about what our community fundraising team has done, and then we'll wrap up. So just a few more minutes. So Alison, are you there?
Yes, thank you so much, Petra. My name is Alison, as Petra said, and I work in the community team and I look after Scotland for Brooke. And I'm very lucky to be based in St Andrews on the East Coast. We're so grateful to all of our supporters and volunteers for supporting Brooke, and I have a short video to show you of some of the amazing things that our supporters do to raise funds for Brooke. These things are from bake sales to gala dinners, art auctions to running a marathon, helping with a Brooke stand at county shows to making beautiful handcrafts from home. I hope you enjoy the video, and thank you all so much for supporting Brooke.
Hello and welcome to the Brooke Virtual Quiz. This is a first. I'm Alistair Stewart.
It's fantastic, Alison. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's a really great to see so many happy faces, and hopefully next year we'll all be out doing our fundraising and our sponsored events. And not sure you'll ever catch me skydiving, but hopefully some of you spotted yourselves on there. But really good to remind us what we can do in normal times, and also what we are trying to do at the moment while everyone's on lockdown. And our patron, of course, Alistair Stewart, running a couple of quizzes for us. So really, really good to see that. Thank you so much to everyone. I think that hopefully you've enjoyed our event today. It's been really nice to see you all. Hopefully next year we'll be able to see you all in person. We really do appreciate everything that you're doing for Brooke. You know, whether you are out there volunteering, whether you, like me, have left a legacy to Brooke, you know, whether you're making a regular donation or just coming along to encourage everybody else. You know, at times like these, the community spirit amongst Brooke supporters is so important, and we really do appreciate it. And hopefully today's event is a real opportunity for us to say thank you so much to all of you, because as Claire said, we only do what we do because of your support. So that is brings our event to a close, and I really want to say, you know, take care, look after yourselves, and hopefully I'll see some of you again soon. But thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to Harriet for all the organisation. Take care, everyone, and see you again soon. Bye-bye.